What if Deku got New Order? There are two ways this timeline could go. The first way is the more realistic one, based on New Order during the fight between Shigaraki and Star and Stripe. She lost by plot. When Star and Stripe makes a rule on her own quirk to attack other quirks around her, she could remove the strength rule on herself. She takes that order off her body and applies a new rule to target. Anyone fighting Tamura Shigaraki or touching him would receive New Order. That is how Deku would get the quirk in the first place. He would no longer be quirkless and would end the series with a quirk. That path works, but we do not know much after the series except that they graduate and move up the hero rankings. The second version is Deku being born with New Order. This is the one I am going with. With his smart mind, Deku would likely use the quirk better than Star and Stripe. This also means Deku would not need one for all. His parents would have different or similar quirks connected to New Order. So now the questions are, what happens to All Might? What happens to Katsuki Bakugo? Does Deku still get bullied? We are answering all of that as we go through every season in this timeline. Now for Izuku Midoriya's mom and dad, their quirks have to be different in this timeline to make sense. I tried to find the original quirks of Star and Stripe's parents, but nothing is officially known, so I made my own. For his mom, the quirk is verbal authority. Her words carry mental pressure, not physical force. People feel compelled to obey, but they can resist. It requires clear speech and intent. This explains why New Order must be spoken, why wording matters so much, and why Star talks like she is declaring law. It gives her quirk a voice-based foundation without breaking canon. For his dad, the quirk is harder. His quirk is name recognition. It only works when he knows a person's true name. The effects are minor, like disorientation, hesitation, and pressure. There is no raw power and no reality rewrite. This explains why New Order requires calling the target's name, why it fails against unknown or stolen identities, and why Shigaraki broke her quirk by messing with names. Now with that, Midoriya's quirk manifests early, similar to how Star and Stripes did, and his dad still leaves. From here, we go through everything. In his early childhood, Katsuki Bakugo does not bully him as much because Midoriya's quirk is already on par with Bakugo's explosion quirk, maybe even better since New Order is extremely strong. Just like everyone else, Star and Stripe strengthened her quirk over time, so Midoriya cannot simply say make me strong like All Might and have it work. He has to start small. At this early stage, New Order has very limited power and is easy to break. He can say I will not fear and it works, or stay calm and it works, but he cannot rewrite his body or copy All Might's strength. That comes later. Because of this, we skip most early dialogue since Bakugo does not bully him, which changes a lot. We then reach the moment where Midoriya runs in to save Bakugo. His personality is a bit different here, but he is still heroic. When All Might talks to him afterward, Midoriya has more confidence since he has a quirk, but it is still weak. He believes he cannot be as great as All Might yet. All Might still likes his personality and the fact that he jumped in without hesitation. Even though Midoriya is not quirkless, he still receives One for All. Midoriya still trains for One for All and also gets advice from All Might on how to better word New Order. He experiments with phrasing, but he is not strong enough to use it the way Star did. At the UA entrance exam, Bakugo still scores high. Midoriya mainly relies on One for All because it is stronger than his New Order at this point. He destroys the giant robot, and Ochako Uraraka still gives him the points. After his first day at UA, Midoriya's first friends are Ochako Uraraka and Tenya Ida, just like the original timeline. His relationship with Bakugo is better. When asked about his quirk, Midoriya says it is a strength-enhancing quirk mixed with New Order. As a cover, he claims he has two quirks similar to Shoto Todoroki. Since New Order is still weak, most people do not pay much attention to it. Now after that, we get to the part where they throw the baseball to see how far they can throw it with their quirks. Deku mainly uses his strength-enhancing quirk, but he also uses New Order in a small way. He says something like max my fingers so I can use full power, but he can only hold that rule for a short time. Bakugo still uses his normal explosion throw. The next big part is the battle trial arc, Hero vs Villain, run by All Might. This is Ochako Uraraka and Deku versus Bakugo and Tenya Ida. When Bakugo charges straight at Deku, Deku places a New Order on himself, make me all around harder. His whole body becomes tougher so he can take Bakugo's attacks, and he still uses the same movement from the original timeline to put Bakugo down. Uraraka still secures the win against Ida. Bakugo is not as angry as before because he always knew Deku had a strong quirk. He is still mad, but it is more about losing. The next major arc in Season 1 is the USJ arc. The class barely gets started before the League of Villains invades, led by Tamura Shigaraki with a Nomu, aiming to kill All Might. Shota Aizawa fights the low-level villains and holds his own, but the Nomu overwhelms him. Kurogiri teleports the students across across the area. Deku is sent with Tsuyu Asui and Minoru Mineta to the water zone. Deku fights off several villains and holds his ground. He does not rely heavily on New Order here, and fights mostly like the original timeline. All Might arrives, faces the Nomu, and defeats it just like before. After the attack, Deku wants to strengthen New Order. All Might tells him he should build that quirk first before relying too much on One for All, since One for All boosts whatever power he uses with it. Then we move into Season 2 and the Sports Festival arc. Deku does some light training beforehand, but not much. Now next in the Sports Festival is the off-road race. Everyone uses anything they can to get ahead. Deku does not know full Cal yet, so instead he uses New Order. He places a rule to give himself more stamina, or another rule to run faster. Either way, he can keep up with the main group and almost pull ahead. Next is the cavalry battle and then the one-on-one fights. We skip to Shoto Todoroki versus Deku, which is the main turning point. Deku still tells him that his power is his own and not Endeavor's. That moment stays the same. The fight plays out similarly, but Deku is not as injured because he can strengthen his body or his hand with New Order. He can say, "Make my hand stronger," and use his flick at full power more safely than before. Bakugo still wins the festival. Midoriya still loses to Todoroki. After the sports festival ends, Tenya Ida's brother is attacked by Stain. Now we move into the hero internship arc. Deku trains with Gran Torino and learns full Cal just like the original timeline. Gran Torino also pushes Deku to improve New Order and tighten his wording. Deku slowly strengthens it. He can still make 2 rules and is around halfway to Star and Stripe's level of control. During the internships, Tenya Ida and the others are active when the League of Villains attack, with Tamura Shigaraki and the Nomu. When they fight Stain, most things happen the same. New Order does not fully counter Stain, but Deku can boost his body enough to handle around 15% of One for All earlier. He performs better overall, but Stain is still defeated. Midoriya still saves Ida with Todoroki, and Stain still gives his speech. Now we get to the Season 3 training camp. They still go through the forest, fight the monsters, and earn dinner like usual. During this camp, Deku improves his strength quirk, but the main focus is New Order. At this point, he can finally use New Order on other people by saying their name, but it is much weaker than Star and Stripe's version. Deku mainly uses it on himself. He can place a rule like make me handle One for All at 30%, and his body can actually keep up. He can add another rule like my bones will not crack from the recoil, or strengthen my arm to handle One for All. This lets him train far more efficiently. When the League of Villains attacks the camp, we reach Deku versus Muscular while protecting Koda. Deku places New Order on his body to handle close to 40% of One for All. In the original timeline, he struggled badly, but here he fights back much better. Muscular is still overwhelming, so Deku makes a final rule to let his arm handle One for All at 100%. He lands 2 full power hits and completely knocks Muscular out. His arms are not destroyed in this timeline because Deku is not injured, he stays in good shape and does not need to be carried. When Dark Shadow goes out of control, Deku can either calm it with New Order or rely on light like before. This time, Bakugo is never captured. Deku reaches him first, touches Mr. Compress, and disrupts the escape. The League of Villains fails their mission. Since Bakugo is never taken, the rest of Season 3 changes heavily. All Might still raids the League of Villains base, but there is no rescue mission. Deku, Tenya Ida, and Shoto Todoroki are not involved. All Might fights All for One at full power from the start. He still loses One for All, but the battle is shorter and cleaner, and he preserves slightly more strength than in the original timeline. All for One is taken to Tartarus, the massive prison. With Bakugo never being captured, UA is not legally forced to move students onto campus. Still, Nezu pushes for dorms as a safety option. Parents are asked, but it is optional. Most of Class 1A agrees, and they move in. Midoriya gets approval from his mom, and she is much calmer with All Might since her son always had a quirk. We move into the Provisional Hero License exam. This is where Deku develops shoot style. In this timeline, his arms are fine after Muscular, so shoot style is not born from injury but efficiency. Deku can reinforce his body with New Order and safely handle 50 to nearly 60% of One for All. Star and Stripe had a cap on her physical boost, which is why she could not match All Might's raw strength. Deku's body adapts differently, letting him push higher without breaking down. Deku can also now apply New Order to others in small ways. If he touches Shoto Todoroki and gives a calm directive, it works briefly. Because of this, shoot style does not rely on damaged arms or added strain. If needed, Deku simply strengthens his legs with New Order. During the exam with the targets and balls, Deku performs extremely well. We skip ahead. Most of Class 1A earns their provisional licenses, while Bakugo, Todoroki, and a few others fail, same as canon. When Deku and Bakugo fight later, the gap is obvious. Bakugo already knew Deku had a quirk, but now One for All amplifies it further. Deku uses controlled 60% 60% and overwhelms Bakugo without killing him. Bakugo still fights back, but he is clearly outmatched. This pushes Bakugo to train harder than ever. When the big three appear, Deku reacts fast enough to challenge Mirio. Mirio's surprise factor does not work as well, and they exchange blows. Mirio still wins due to experience and permeation, but he leaves with a very different respect for Deku's power. Moving into the Shie Hasaikai arc, Deku meets Kaichisaki and Sir Night-Eye. When Mirio and Deku test Night-Eye, the fight changes completely. Night-Eye cannot keep up with Deku's speed at 50%. Deku restrains himself to avoid destroying the room, reinforces his body with New Order, and earns the approval stamp. He explains both New Order and One for All. They go on patrol, still encounter Eri, and events proceed the same from there. Now we skip ahead to the discovery of the hidden base. Now I want to skip to the part where Mirio is already quirkless and protecting Eri with his hands. Huge W moment for Mirio. Deku, Night-Eye, and everyone else get there in time. Midoriya is way faster here because he is already moving at 60%, and he makes sure Night-Eye is not in the way, so Night-Eye sees a completely different future. When Overhaul merges everyone together and becomes that giant monster, he still has Eri with him. Here's the big change. Deku can put a new order on Eri to stop her rewind quirk. He gives a command like stop rewinding or stop quirk, and it works. Deku drops her off safely, then pushes his limit. He uses New Order and says make my body suitable for 100%. He can only hold this order for a few minutes because it bends reality too much at this stage. Deku overwhelms Overhaul and finishes the fight, but the backlash is brutal. Stopping Eri's quirk and forcing his body to handle 100% takes a huge toll. His body is wrecked, but he survives. After that, we move into the school festival. That song was a banger, no debate. When Deku fights the villain there, he handles it easily by using around 60%. After this, he keeps training, but I'm going to skip ahead. Now we move into Season 5 with Class A versus Class B. This is the part a lot of people clicked for, wondering how Deku survives having One for All plus another quirk. There are two ways this could go. One way is Deku using New Order to make his body suitable for multiple quirks, but that would shorten his lifespan over time. We know a previous One for All user got the quirk at 22 and died at 40, giving about 20 years. Deku already has more quirks manifesting, so realistically, he might have around 20 to 25 years. That is the trade-off. Back to the Class A and Class B fight. When Black Whip comes out, the copy quirk still cannot copy Deku. When Black Whip goes wild, Deku puts a new order on himself and says stop Black Whip. He controls it on his own without help from Ochako Uraraka or Hitoshi Shinso in this timeline. After that, he speaks with the previous users and is told not to fear the power. He still cannot fully use it yet, but New Order helps. He gives himself a rule to make his body strong enough to handle Black Whip, not master it fully, but close. He uses it to capture everyone and secure a clean win, almost as clean as Bakugo. Now we go into the internship with Endeavor, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Deku. During the internship with Endeavor, most of the training goes the same, but Endeavor gives Deku new advice because of how his powers work together. Deku has One for All, New Order, and a strength-enhancing quirk, and Endeavor actually helps him understand how to use all of that more efficiently. Deku learns a lot here because Endeavor gives solid guidance and straight talk. Deku also does not really show Black Whip much during this time, because it is hard to explain. If anything, he just covers it up by saying it is another strength-enhancing quirk that awakens, similar to how things were handled in the original timeline. At this point, it looks like Deku almost has 3 quirks, but nobody pushes too hard with questions. With that done, we move straight into Season 6. One of my favorite seasons is when they raid the Paranormal Liberation hideout and the hospital. Most of this plays out the same because Deku is busy saving and evacuating people. The big change happens when Deku and Bakugo fight Tamura Shigaraki with Endeavor, and Shoto Todoroki shows up later. This time, Deku goes almost full power right away. With New Order and all the training he has been doing, he can nearly handle 70%. Even though it is extremely hard, he pushes Shigaraki back while Shota Aizawa is erasing his quirks. Deku helps a lot more in this timeline. He uses Black Whip at its fullest and puts 2 rules on himself. One rule lets him use Black Whip properly, and the second rule lets him use about 70% of his strength-enhancing quirk. Deku is fast enough to save Bakugo and help everyone else. When Shigaraki starts pushing back, Deku jumps to 100%. This turns into a full brawl, and Shigaraki starts losing badly. In the original timeline, Deku was only around 45%, so at near 100% here, Shigaraki cannot keep up, especially without his quirks. Everyone still has to step in. Gigantomachia still arrives, and Toya Todoroki, also known as Dabi, still reveals the truth to Endeavor. Endeavor freezes up, but this time Deku is not badly hurt, his arms are fine, and Bakugo is not stabbed. Shigaraki escapes, but he is severely injured and only has raw strength left. After a few months, Shigaraki knows the United States is coming. He barely has enough strength to break All for One out. He then lays low until America arrives. Star and Stripe still loses no matter what, with or without changes to her quirk. After that, everyone prepares for the final battle. Deku never goes into the dark lone hero phase, because he does not need to. He is still targeted by Lady Nagant and Muscular, but he pushes through and returns to UA. He trains with Bakugo and the rest of the class. This helps Deku a lot. He unlocks more quirks, and his new order reaches full Star and Stripe level. At this point, Deku can use new order without limits, just like Star did in the original timeline. Now we're hitting the final war. Everything basically happens the same up to this point, just with harder training for Deku. With all that, the final war is totally different. They all teleport to different battlefields, and Midoriya actually makes it to the correct one, because he is fast and strong enough to force his way there before Himiko Toga can even react. Deku still sees Bakugo badly hurt, because Bakugo rushes straight in and Tamura Shigaraki almost kills him. But it is not as bad as the original timeline. Deku is more on par this time. Using New Order to boost his body strength, Deku can place New Order on others, but he mainly uses it on himself to stay at 100%. He could boost Bakugo if needed, but most of the time he focuses on himself. When he uses Gear Shift, it is way different in this timeline. He places a New Order to stop the recoil and backlash, letting him use Gear Shift longer without the same consequences. Because of that, Deku starts fighting Shigaraki much earlier. Bakugo fights alongside him, but he cannot keep up fully yet. Over at All for One's battlefield, Hawk still loses his quirk, which is sad, and Endeavor still manages to pull out a win. Everything plays out the same, up to the point where Armored All Might gets defeated and All for One is about to kill him. Then Bakugo jumps in and saves All Might. That moment is still peak. Bakugo still beats him down, and that fight is one of the cleanest and best animated fights in My Hero Academia. After that, Midoriya puts everything he has into One for All and finishes things with Shigaraki. Most of the ending stays the same. The big difference is that New Order is not fully tied to One for All, so Deku keeps it. He loses the strength boost, but he does not lose New Order. By the end, Deku is not quirkless. He still has New Order, a broken quirk that he can use way smarter than anyone else. Bakugo is not left feeling like Deku lost everything. New Order stays with him and he becomes a great hero because of it. This is honestly one of my best timelines. I went through almost every major moment in My Hero Academia. If you want more, check out What If Deku Awakened His Quirks Early. That one is close, but this one is better. Check out the Discord below, check out my main channel for Demon Slayer content, and make sure to like and subscribe.